And I would ask that the board secretary please call roll.
Board Member Becker.
Present.
Vice Chair Haviland.
Here.
Chair Schumacher.
Present. And with that, if Board Member Haviland, Vice Chair Haviland would lead us in the pledge, please.
Okay. Hands over your hearts, please, and ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. We'll go ahead and move into any board comments or announcements. Seeing none, I don't believe we have any presentations, and I don't believe we have any approval of the minutes. Seeing none, we'll move directly into item 1, which is the establishment of a Clean Energy Alliance ad hoc committee for joint procurement with San Diego Community Power. Ms. Boswell.
Thank you, Chair Schumacher. I will share my screen for the purposes of the PowerPoint. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is a continuation, an item that came as a result of the discussion at the last regular meeting of the Clean Energy Alliance Board with relation to the potential of a joint procurement with San Diego Community Power, which we were looking at for purposes of an upcoming long-term renewable solicitation. As the packet had been posted, this represents that packet. San Diego Community Power did have their board meeting yesterday evening, and where they discussed the long-term renewable procurement and the concept or approach of a joint procurement with Clean Energy Alliance. After discussion among the board, they did decide for this particular procurement to move forward as a single entity without a joint procurement. And their concerns were mostly related to the timing. They are launching in March. And so they have were concerned about if this would, the joint venture taking additional time. They did want to get the procurement out early next week, as early as Monday. They are, with their March launch, they have an earlier deadline to meet with regards to contracting for their procurement, and they have a significant load demand with which to procure. So I will turn it over to Greg Stepanisic. He did assist with putting together the recommendation related to the concept of a committee, either an ad hoc committee or a joint committee with San Diego Community Power to discuss the potential joint procurement. So Greg, if you would like to take it from here.
Right, yes, now with this new development from SDCP, the need for the trying to develop having a board member representative with staff to talk about the joint procurement has gone away. I mean, this again could be still a concept that the board could consider for the future and other collaboration with SDCP, but at this point in time, it no longer has the immediate need that it had as our last meeting.
So Chair Schumacher, how would you like to proceed with regards to this item?
Okay, so that was the end of the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll move on to board discussion. All right, if you don't mind bringing us back to the full gallery so that we can see each other, Ms. Boswell. Thank you so much. Did I have any clarifying questions or any comments from the other board members?
I did have a question. That's the first time I've ever heard that San Diego is launching in March, and I'm wondering how that came about and if that will affect us since they're launching a month before us.
They're launching in several phases. their phase one are only the municipal accounts, so the actual city accounts that are serving city accounts in March. I believe their second phase is after our phase, and I want to say it's early summer. I'll have to pull up their schedule, but I do know their first phase in March is only the city municipal accounts.
So does that give them any kind of advantages that we might need to look at and moving ours up, or is this just doesn't make a difference for us?
Yeah, I don't know that it would gives them any necessary advantage. I would say that in discussions with San Diego Gas and Electric with regards to schedule, that their phase one is very small, and you might recall they're doing a new billing system replacement project. And so they have concerns with any CCAs launching earlier. They did accommodate SDCP's phase one due to the small size of it only being their city accounts and not other customers for March. If the board had an interest in us reaching out to SDG&E with regards to any type of an adjustment, we can certainly do that, but I'm not aware of any particular benefits or advantages that they would have by having a March launch and then CEA launching in May.
Okay, I guess I was just picturing SDG&E if they would say things like, "Oh, we're too busy right now. We've got all this other stuff going on and whatever." So, okay, great. That answers the question.
Ms. Haviland, any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. Is there, are there items that we're going to be collaborating on in the near future that would make the appointment of a member to work with the San Diego group important to do today or important to do in the near future? And it does, sorry, I lost my second question. Why don't you answer that and I'll try to think of my second question.
Yeah, thank you for that. I did speak with Cody Hooven, the interim CEO of San Diego Community Power earlier today before our meeting. And she did indicate that they would be interested in future opportunities. We don't currently, neither agency at this point has another solicitation in process or planned, but certainly as we plan for those, we can talk to this board, the CEA board, in advance of that, and also with SDCP, and look at whether there are benefits to approaching it as a joint, and then building that into the process earlier on. I know this was a little short turnaround with regards to.
He was interested in working with us in that way, collaborating with us in general, but also interested in having a subgroup talk about terms and before we go to both of our boards for final approval. They were interested in the concept, but just the timing didn't work. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was what was communicated to me by Cody.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned, sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned something else in, I thought you said that they also were concerned about some kind of differences in opinions on different goals or something. I can't remember how you phrased it.
Oh, I think that the timing was related to the discussions that were had with the board with regards to maybe looking at criteria. I think they were generally happy with the RFP, although they did review the RFP and make a few modifications to the evaluation criteria, I believe, in theirs. But the main focus was really related around timing and the approach of having the committee, an ad hoc committee, look at determining evaluation criteria with respect to this particular procurement or solicitation, and their desire to have it open early next week. And that precluded the ability to have this type of approach with regards to the committee and the committee working on criteria ahead of that.
So that was, I've got a couple of questions based upon that, and I appreciate the follow-up question from Ms. Becker, because it speaks to what, for me, is one of the challenges with how we've approached this, which is putting sort of the cart before the horse. In other words, no policies in place as far as bid evaluation criteria, no policies in place as far as how to prioritize what we would like to see in the RFP, and the whole concept of reaching out to the other JPA was not to make it more cumbersome with the RFP, but to actually have a conversation between board members so that we can all be on board. I mean, one of the questions that was asked at our last board meeting was whether or not the SDCP was going to be able to review the RFP. And given the fact that we hadn't had the opportunity to review the RFP, the special meeting that we're having today was all about being able to review something that the other agency would potentially have the opportunity to review, and we were being asked to approve pursuit of it. So I feel like, to Ms. Haviland's point, it would be really beneficial for this board to step up and be proactive about the outreach from a board-to-board level. As much as I appreciate the work of staff, it is the board members who are making these decisions, and I just want to make sure that we're not crossing each other as far as communication is concerned. So I would absolutely be very supportive of putting together whether it's a joint committee or some type of standing committee of this board that is working with staff to proactively have conversations with our other JPA in the county to make sure that these opportunities are not missed in the future. So I'd go ahead and make a motion to, first I want to clarify with Mr. Stepanisic that we would be creating something that would be standing, because an ad hoc committee would be probably for an RFP that would then dissolve. So this would be a standing committee that would then be doing the work, a board member and staff, of proactively interacting with the other JPA.
Yes, it wouldn't so much be a standing committee as it would be a board designee would work with staff on these issues. Just because we have a whole Brown Act issue with such a small board here, once we get 2 board members or even at some official committee form with a board member, you have that issue of creating a Brown Act committee. So, but the board can designate a board member to work with staff with the direction to address the issues of RFPs and joint collaboration in the future.
Okay, then that would be my motion. So we would establish, we can move with that, and then we can actually be able to appoint a designee at this meeting. Would that be possible? After?
Yes,
okay, so we'll go with the first meeting of designating one of our board members for that position.
Can I clarify that board member would not have the ability to speak for us, that whatever is talked about or discussed, would any decisions made would come back to the board for approval?
Yes. So yes, the individual designated board member would have no decision-making authority. So any decisions to be made by the board would have to come back to the board for approval.
I would imagine we would have report outs by that designee at each meeting, whether it's a nothing to report or had a meeting. So, Ms. Haviland, did you have your hand raised?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, I'll ask the board secretary to please take the roll vote.
Board Member Becker,
I'm not. I'm going to vote no today. I think that it's necessary at some point, but not today. So I'm going to vote no.
Vice Chair Haviland,
Yes.
Chair Schumacher.
Yes. So that passes 2-1. And then I would like to nominate, or I would like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Haviland as the designee. If you would take it.
Can I ask a question before we consider a second on that?
Certainly.
Is it possible for us to nominate a board member and their alternate to be part of the subcommittee? Or is it just one board member?
Yeah, I think that's actually a Mr. Stepanovich. Do you see a problem with that?
No, the board member could work with their alternate to
Okay.
play that role. That would be okay. That only represents one vote of the board.
So then I'm absolutely willing to do this. I don't want to speak for my alternate, and I will not sign my alternate up without asking them, but I am willing to do this. But if there is someone who feels strongly about this and wants to do it, I'm happy to let someone else take it as well.
I guess I just wanted to say that I was just thinking if we were more flexible on each issue, there might be someone that has an expertise and felt that they wanted to work with a member. And that's why I feel like it's just a little bit premature, is because there might be different issues that one or more of the board members feel like they'd like to tackle. So I guess I just wonder about that. I mean, it doesn't take too long to designate someone for that month to reach out to somebody, or I don't know, is that just going to be too cumbersome?
Ms. Haviland?
I understand where you're coming from. I see this role more as being proactive and working with staff to make sure that as we go through the details of implementing our plan, that there's another set of eyes looking out to make sure that the board has the ability to weigh in on these items in a way that gives us time to collaborate as a board on how we want to move forward with them, not so much on crafting individual policies or RFPs or this is really just making sure that things that are important to the board come to the board in a timely manner so that we can all weigh in. Does that fit with how you see this person working with staff?
So I see it very much the same way. And also with this idea that as we're moving into this space, we can do one of a couple of things. We can, as individual board members, reach out to sort of our favorite board member or somebody, an elected official that we have a good relationship with on the other board, where it's more about personal relationships in an informal setting. Or we can do it in a more formal setting, which is that we choose the person to go out and we hope, form a relationship board to board, board member to board member, and board to board of the JPAs, so that if there are any questions, that there's basically somebody who's formally given the task of answering questions or proactively getting out there and starting the relationship. This could, what I'm concerned about is that just at the staff level, I think this is a good example of how a board member could have been really helpful, because I think when we're looking at something like trust around priorities and around the bidding criteria, well, we want to make sure that we're communicating in a situation like this where maybe neither of the JPAs has had a chance to really establish policy that is forward facing, where the other JPA can go, oh, those are our policies too. Those are our values too, that the relationships are there, so that we're not missing opportunities. So it's an establishment of trust. It's making sure that we're proactive on the communication side of things, and that we're not missing things, and that there's a real board-to-board direct connection. So not really specific items, but if there are specific items, the designee would come back and say, hey, this is what's coming up. And if then we can have the conversation about whether or not maybe there's somebody else on the board who just says, hey, I'd really love to jump into this project. And then we can actually designate that person for that project. So there's still that flexibility, Ms. Becker.
If I can ask a question in terms of the use of the designee, is this intended to relate only to joint projects with SDCP, or is there any other broader scope that's being considered by the board here?
I think it's just SDCP for now. I think we've already had the conversation about potential other partners And that's a different set of responsibilities and roles that we've already established.
Right, got it.
Do we know that San Diego is at all interested in this type of thing?
We don't.
Yeah, okay.
We don't,
So
but if they're
ask.
not, yeah, that's exactly right. And if they're not, we still have designated our person to go have conversations. We've given somebody the responsibility to make sure that we're keeping in direct contact as a board with those folks over there, which we don't have yet.
Okay.
So with that,
I can second Ellie and Dwight, if Dwight is so interested.
Not having asked him, why don't you?
So the motion can include pending Dwight's voluntary participation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Board Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haviland,
Yes.
Chair Schumacher.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Congratulations, Ms. Haviland. And thank you. Thank you. Okay, so if we don't have any further conversation around this item.
I think item 3, right, on that. I mean, I'm sorry.
Then we'll go ahead and move on to item 2, which is the Clean Energy Alliance Long-Term Renewable Energy Solicitation. Ms. Boswell, go ahead and introduce this item and let us know where we're at with it.
Thank you. This is a continuation of an item from your regular meeting of June 18th. And I will ask, we have Kirby DeSell, John DeLassy, and Brian Goldstein from Pacific Energy Advisors. This item is being brought back at the request of the board to include the request for proposal so the board could review and provide input to the actual RFP. I know we were having trouble getting Kirby added, and I can see him, but it's showing connecting. So if you can give me one moment to see if we can get him in. So John, since we're having technical difficulties with Kirby, can you, do you mind taking there's Kirby.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to share the screen and jump to the presentation. So the recommendation before the board for this item is to review, provide input, and approve the request for proposal for long-term renewable solicitation. The second item that had been included would no longer apply, since at this point we're not considering joint procurement with San Diego Community Power for this particular solicitation. I will turn it over to Kirby to take the presentation from here.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we covered much of this material previously and at last week's board meeting in particular. And so, I think the basis for the discussion this afternoon is really to get your thoughts on specific items related to the RFP document itself. I think there was a concern raised at your board meeting last week that the full document had yet to be received and that an opportunity for review hadn't been provided. So now that document's been shared with you, I think the idea is to answer any questions that you might have. Of course, Barbara just mentioned that that really, I think at this point, we're looking at moving forward independent of San Diego Community Power, because at their board meeting last night, they decided to act on their own behalf in moving forward with this solicitation. So you'd be on separate tracks. And I think initially we had intended to launch the RFP process shortly after last week's board meeting. And since now we're talking with y'all today, I think what we'd be looking to do is add about a week to the schedule that you're seeing on your screen right now. I think that's also something to talk about. I think there's a reason not to launch an RFP on the same date as another entity. And since we now know that San Diego Community Power is going to move forward with its own solicitation on June 29th, I think doing something on the same day is probably not a good idea, as things can get lost in the shuffle of emails. And so I think anything within about a week of that would be a good idea. I wouldn't recommend launching it on Friday, as most people will be observing the holiday weekend that day. But I think, Monday or Tuesday of the following week probably makes good sense. Of course, we could also do it in the middle of next week too. Really up to you. There's nothing strategic in particular about picking any one of those days, other than to say I'd avoid putting it on the 29th at this point in time. I think, other than that, I just want to make sure that I'm available to answer any questions that you might have. I know we walked through last time kind of the general idea behind the solicitation, meeting your long-term renewable energy requirements as mandated under California's Renewables Portfolio Standard Program. And so I think that was what I was hoping to do, was answer any questions or walk through specific elements of the document that you might want to cover.
All right, thank you. Ms. Boswell, did you have anything further to add?
No, that would conclude our presentation.
Okay, and I'll take it to public comment if we have any. Ms. Cobian?
Yes, we have one comment to read into the record. Dear Chair Schumacher and members of the board, we write on behalf of the Sierra Club, MyGen Carlsbad team, and over 3,400 members of IBEW 569. Thank you for holding this meeting. Long-term renewable energy procurement is a major milestone for CEA in the community, and we appreciate this opportunity to comment on the draft RFP document. On June 1st, we sent a letter outlining our recommendations on CEA long-term renewable energy procurement. As follow-up, we offer the following edits to the draft long-term renewable energy RFP in the board agenda package. 1. Exclude Category 2 and focus on Category 1 to maximize job creation and greenhouse gas reduction opportunities. This is consistent with priorities outlined by the CEA board in previous board discussions. 2. Under evaluation of responses, separate bullet C into 3 distinct bullets: project location, benefits to the local economy, and benefits to the local workforce. Finally, we request that the board to direct staff that prior to releasing any future long-term renewable energy solicitations, CEA will adopt an inclusive and sustainable workforce policy and a bid evaluation criteria policy. We have offered policy framework recommendations for both in our June 1st and June 19th communications. Thank you, Mike McMahon, Sierra Club Carlsbad, MyGen team, and Gretchen Newsom. And that was our only comment.
Okay, thank you. I'll shift over to any board member questions. Ms. Haviland.
Yes, I had a question about the public comment we just received and the impacts of going to Category 2 exclusively in this procurement. What would the impacts be on our ability to be able to offer competitive rates or rates lower than SDG&E? Do you have a feel for if that's going to put us in a difficult spot, or if that's something that's feasible?
Yeah, we've run that sensitivity in the past related to your pro forma, and I think what we've seen in doing that is that we're kind of walking a bit of a tightrope there. And so the idea through this solicitation is to gather information primarily. It's not to make any decisions necessarily. It's to gather information to determine what sort of projects are out there, how they're priced, and then to evaluate those proposals in consideration of how they fit within your budgetary framework. And so, I think the idea that I have and that I would recommend to you all is that there's no harm in gathering information. It doesn't direct any decisions in particular, and having that information isn't a bad thing. It just provides a sense for where the market's at with regard to certain renewable energy products that you may need to buy in order to meet your various rate related objectives and so forth. So I would encourage you to consider leaving that piece of the puzzle in your RFP, and then to the extent that prices allow for it, minimize or eliminate the use of those bucket 2 products when you go through your contracting process. So, I think that's a course of action that is that's kind of reasonable and prudent at this point in time. I think excluding that requirement or option from your RFP just deprives you of information, candidly. And to the extent that you might want or need that information, there's no harm in having it, just so you can pair it against the other proposals that you might get. I'd also note just one final comment that it's probably unlikely that there will be too many long-term bucket 2 proposals anyway, but we've spec'd that out again just for the sake of gathering information. Bucket 2 products are typically traded on shorter term bases, often in that 1 to 2 or 3 year range. And so this would be a little unusual, but at the same time worth hearing more about, to the extent that the market has offers that it would like to provide to you.
Thank you.
Ms. Becker, any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Okay, I had a question, and basically just a general question on long-term contracts, the long-term renewables. Do they vary? Is there an average length of time? Do they vary? Is there a minimum amount of time that we're looking at for these? Can you just give me a sense of the flexibility of the length of long-term?
Absolutely, yeah, good question. So in order to meet the RPS requirements related to long-term, the contract must be a minimum 10 years duration.
Okay.
So that's the threshold for meeting that long-term contracting requirement. But continuing on and answering, I think, the balance of the information that you wanted to gather, long-term contracts can be all the way up to it's rare, but they can be up to 30 years. It really is dependent upon the way that the project developer is looking to recover their costs. And I think what we're finding more recently is that 10 to 20 year range is becoming a lot more common.
Okay.
We've definitely seen other CCAs that have entered into 25-year deals.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's sufficient. Thank you so much. When we're looking at the evaluation of responses as far as the criteria, and we didn't say anything about evaluating any of the responses by the length of the contract. Is that something that would be beneficial for us to look at with the evaluation criteria?
Yeah, so the RFP definitely has a requirement that the contracts that are going to be considered as part of this process, all proposals must be for delivery terms of 10 years or more. I think that's one area where we could certainly consider it and will consider it as part of proposal evaluation, but I'd say it's more of a minor point, and that's a term that's pretty easily negotiated as well. So if you wanted to have 15 years as opposed to 20, or 10 years as opposed to 15, that's something that you could really kind of pick at those edges as you work through your negotiation process. I wouldn't say that it would be a heavily weighted criteria, though. Hopefully that's a helpful response.
I think it might be, if we're looking at if it's a category 1 or category 2, or for instance, if the board does decide to do, for instance, to go with the pro forma, or with the business plan that actually scales to 100% category 2 over a certain period of time. So there might be, for our purposes, a benefit to actually evaluating the length of time based upon, unfortunately, what will be a later decision around the bucket 2, bucket 1, which is why we as a board requested multiple pro formas to take a look at the shifting of the buckets. So I wonder if my colleagues would find a value in putting the length of contract into the evaluation of responses, just so that we as a board, when we're looking at the solicitations, um, we just might keep it at the forefront. No, we're talking about negotiating, but typically you have to choose a bid to negotiate with before you step into the flexibility of the contract. And I think that the flexibility of the contract is something that I don't know necessarily anything about at this point. Is it going to be a 10-year minimum with the flexibility to go longer? Are there some contracts, for instance, that are set time periods that we wouldn't be able to be flexible with as far as time? So this is kind of what I'm grappling with right now, is because we haven't done the sort of the work around the category 2 or the bucket 2 side of things, and how fast we want to get there, if at all. How the contract length of time and the flexibility of the length of time of the contract might be something that's appealing to us as a board. Does that all make sense? I'm looking at the other board members to see if that makes sense. Ms. Haviland.
Well, so I think there's value in exploring this. If we want to make a shift in the types of power we're purchasing 5 years down the road, are we able to, well, I guess my question doesn't make sense at this point. Because if you're in a 10-year minimum contract, you don't really have a way out of it if something more appropriate comes along. What happens if one of the companies that we contract with goes out of business? Do we have flexibility on how that gets replaced?
Yes. So that's one of the reasons that it's really important to evaluate the financial viability of all your respective respondents. So that's a key piece of the puzzle. You know, what is their financing plan? Is the project already well into the development cycle, or is it very early on in the process? Have they done this before? Have they sold to CCA organizations? If they haven't, who else have they sold to? If they've sold to the larger utilities and the larger utilities have observed success with those particular suppliers, probably pretty safe to assume that you'll be safe, expecting to receive all those deliveries throughout the contract term. You know, I think one of the big things to consider when we're looking at contract term lengths is how they overlay with one another in your overall supply portfolio. Because, you know, what we don't want is we don't want a bunch of contracts all ending at the same point in time, because that exposes you unnecessarily to market price risk. And so I think what you'd really prefer is a range of different contract durations and start dates. So these contracts are coming on and falling off in the future at different point in times, leaving smaller gaps to fill rather than these planning cliffs, right? So you don't want to walk along and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out of your supply and you're right back in the market buying everything that you need at one point in time. That's definitely not a good idea, and we strongly advise against that. So, you know, I think when we're talking about suppliers here and how you line up your contracts, sure, there's always a risk that a particular seller, goes bankrupt or otherwise fails. And again, that's why we take a really close look at if they have a credit rating, what is it? Have they done this before? How long have they been in business? Have they had success along the way?
Well, if we're gonna look at evaluate terms of the length of the term, which is a minimum of 10 years, we could set it up so that the less desirable energy mix is in the shorter and the more desirable ones are spaced out to expire later, so that we have more flexibility in replacing the less desirable ones sooner rather than later. Is that what you were hoping to get to, Chair Schumacher?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay. And but because it's not a policy decision that we've analyzed yet, when we last asked, we're going to be looking at that during rate setting. But clearly it's a valuable conversation to have right now when we're thinking about this mix of long-term with the solicitations and the evaluation criteria. So I think because we haven't had that conversation yet, because we haven't set the criteria for the prioritization yet, I think it would be valuable for us to add in to the evaluation of responses the length of time to give us the ability in between setting out the RFP and receiving bids to do the work of hashing out the priorities of this list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Ms. Haviland?
Yeah, but the question that I had was if this evaluation process, I don't know if we consider it the length of the contract good or bad, just on the metric of the length itself. So it's a combination of what the power mix is and the length. So it's a little, I'm not sure how this would get worded in an evaluation criteria.
You're right.
Now,
You're absolutely right.
I tell you from a planning perspective, erring towards the shorter end of that spectrum, the 10-year term rather than the 25 makes a lot of sense to me. And I think with all of the volatility that can occur in power markets, as well as the really precipitous decline in wholesale renewable energy prices that's occurred over the last several years, I wouldn't want to go too long because you never know what can happen. So we've been the clients that we've supported in their resource planning efforts. I think nowadays we're really looking at that 10 to 15 year range when we're filling long-term contract positions and trying to err, if we can, on the shorter end of that spectrum, just so you have more flexibility along the way.
Okay. The recommendation in the public comment to segment out item C under the evaluation of responses, that would actually, I think, be helpful in, again, once we submit the RFP, I believe we're going to have to, as a board, set the priorities for those solicitations as they come back in. So there's sort of this interim period where we're going to want to grapple with this list and establish the board's priorities with this list. And it would be, I think, much easier if we followed the recommendation of the public comment to break apart that item C, which is to have a standalone project location, to have a standalone local economy portion, benefits to the local economy, and then benefits to the local workforce. So I actually agreed with the public comment, and I was wondering if my colleagues had any thoughts about that.
I wanted to ask staff what difference that would make breaking out number C into those three differences, because I feel like it is encompassed in C. So what would be the effect of breaking that out? I don't know if Kirby or Barb or whoever wants to take this.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. Breaking those out is a non-issue, and we can do that.
But why would we do it if it's just the same exact language?
So I would like to offer a suggestion or my insight into that. The reason is because project location could be valued differently by this board than the workforce, for instance. So if we believe that the project location should be given a higher, say if we're rating it on a scale of 1 to 10, and we give project location an 8 on that scale, we really, really want it to be local. We want it to be in the region of San Diego. So we give that an 8 on the scale of priorities, or a 1 or a 2, depending on how you're rating it. Whereas workforce might be something that we grapple with and say it has a different priority in the spectrum of priorities. Throwing location, local economy, and workforce together doesn't give us the opportunity to do that. What it does is it throws all of these three items together in a way that would just get one numerical value in an evaluation criteria.
Okay, but that's not what I heard our expert Kirby say. Did we lose him?
I think Kirby had to drop off, but yeah,
I'm
so
trying to switch
the way
phone. Somebody will let me in now. Okay, here we go. Now I'm on.
okay.
Thanks.
I don't know if you heard the question, Kirby, but so yeah, if you were to go with more of a numerical ranking, then I think it would be have an impact to separate those items.
But we haven't decided we're going on to a numerical, because there is also ways of going high, medium, low type categories as well, right?
Yeah, and actually that my preference would be to avoid a numerical ranking, but yeah, I'm not the decision maker here,
but you
so
are our expert today, so
yeah, you know, from my perspective, it doesn't hurt to separate them. It doesn't hurt, and so you know, if you want to be able to evaluate those items separately when you ultimately come down to, you know, how to evaluate them, then you know, it would be fine. You know, we would not, it wouldn't be something we'd be concerned about or recommend against. It's, you know, we'd be perfectly fine with that.
Ms. Haviland?
I think it makes sense to have the flexibility of having them separated out. There's no downside to it, and it might give us more flexibility down the road when we have more decisions to make.
So I guess, is it time like for some comments, or did you have more on that one, or?
Please feel free.
Well, I do want to acknowledge, and I really want to say that I appreciate the comments that we received from the Sierra Club Carlsbad team and the IBEW 569, and I absolutely align with many of those goals for CCAs, but that would be long-term goals. However, I just feel that right now, our most important thing is to follow guidance from every CCA that has ever launched in California. In the first couple years, you need to get your feet under you. You need to build up your reserves so that we ensure a successful CCA. And I know firsthand that what you need to do is have so much flexibility. So as to the first comment, I absolutely believe that we need to keep the content category 2 on the table. I absolutely know that we need that flexibility. I also, what we're doing here is our state mandate. We have to get these contracts in line, 25% of it, the renewable long-term contracts. So we're not talking about all of them. We're talking about our initial state mandated requirement. And now we're already delayed another week. And I think it's important. We want to receive as many responses as possible. If we start specifying too much on our evaluation criteria and all these different things, we're going to limit our responses. And I really, really believe that we don't need to be doing that right now. And we need to leave it broad for now. And later we have so much more time to refine if it's necessary. But if our experts are comfortable separating C, I can actually go with that if it doesn't change anything from these evaluation responses. I will follow their advice if it doesn't change anything. But again, if it doesn't change anything, I don't know why we're splitting it out. But that my feeling again is that we just have to be flexible, and we have to receive a lot of responses to get the best product. So I don't want to go limiting anything today.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Becker. Ms. Haviland?
Yes, I'm on the specific comments that came forward on the letter. I agree that it's too soon for us to be excluding category 2. Once we get the proposals in, we can take a look at what options we have and to the best of our abilities maximize, or maybe even at that point exclude category 2, or to at least maximize category 1. But I don't want to jeopardize our long-term viability by making that decision without even seeing what's out there yet. So I can't support that decision at this point. I do hope we can get to a point as a JPA where we aren't in a position where we have to consider that. I just don't feel like we're there today. I think it's a good idea to break out bullet C into the 3 different categories. And they also made a comment about future long-term renewable solicitations that maybe isn't pertinent to this conversation. But we do need to talk about that as a board sooner rather than later, so that we're not in a position of sending out RFPs without having the appropriate policies in place. So I'm comfortable with the staff recommendation with the addition of separating out the bullet C.
Okay. I'm on board with that as well. So similar thoughts. But I do want to make it clear that one of the things that I'm hoping that we can get to sooner rather than later, because it is actually very, very important for this board to set the policies at the outset in order to give guidance for the RFPs. And we'll see that even in the next agenda item, where we're being asked to do something where it would have been very helpful for us to have policy decisions taken care of beforehand. So it's our job to give direction and shape to the CEA. And I appreciate that that we have amazing staff here who know exactly how to take, a generic JPA forward. But I just the flavor of this and how we do it is important, and we do need to set policy. So I'll be bringing something up at the end of the meeting in relation to that, because I'm just not comfortable with us continuing to push policymaking further and further down the road when we know that we have these things that are happening right now. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve this RFP as just for the JPA. So of course we have to change the language, so it's not a joint JPA. With the changes that were discussed on bullet point C under the evaluation of responses. And then I'll talk about, and then we can have a conversation about the timeline, the schedule after this motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Board Secretary, can you please take roll call vote?
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haviland,
Yes.
Chair Schumacher.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Let's talk about the recommendation on the schedule. So what are the benefits of not submitting it on June 29th?
The thinking there is that because the SDCP solicitation is going out on that day, that there just is the potential that it gets overlooked, that people confuse the two. And so the thought was just to put a day or two separation between the issuance of those two.
You can't get it out today, can you?
That's exactly what I was
No,
thinking.
can't get it out today.
End the meeting early and. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why we would have to wait a week. It doesn't seem like that's something necessary. Nor do I like the idea that this JPA was not given the opportunity to review the RFP, and then the other JPA was, and therefore our schedule has now been pushed back by a week because we wanted to take a look at the RFP. I just that thinking is just doesn't work for me. So if anything, we need our consultants to actually be quicker and more nimble than the other JPA. So that's what I would hope. Cleaner, faster JPA. That's what we want. More nimble.
Yeah, well, I don't think it has to be a week. I think that was a suggestion, but I think the recommendation is just that it not be on that same day. So if you wanted to issue it Tuesday, don't think that would be a problem.
Maybe
Sooner rather than
Wednesday.
later.
Yeah, maybe Wednesday, just give it a couple days in between.
That would work too.
Ms. Haviland?
Yeah, Wednesday's fine too. I was fine with Tuesday as well. And launching early next week, does that push the other dates off? Significant, obviously there's a certain amount of time it needs to be out, but does the final result is it really making that much of a difference to wait a day or two? Or are we having the same result?
Yeah, I think there's ample time built into the amount of time that's allowed for the responses that we could squeeze a day out of that, and it really wouldn't have any impact.
Okay. All right.
All right, so Tuesday would be the 30th. Wednesday would be the 1st of July. Preference?
I think
I heard two Wednesdays. You want to just go with July 1st then?
Yeah, July 1st is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and I'll hear a motion for July 1st.
I move that RFP gets issued on July 1st.
Second.
And we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haviland,
Yes.
Chair Schumacher.
Aye. That item passes unanimously. The motion passes unanimously. All right. Anything further that staff needs off of item number 2?
Nope.
Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap that up and move on to item 3, which is our Clean Energy Alliance Resource Adequacy Procurement. This item was continued from the June 18th meeting. Ms. Boswell?
Thank you, Chair Schumacher. One moment and I will share my screen for the presentation. As the chair mentioned, this item was continued from the June 18th meeting to this meeting. The recommendation before the board is, this is related to our resource adequacy procurement. It is to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute agreements for resource adequacy procurement for an amount not to exceed $14 million over 3 years, and which amount has been included within the Clean Energy Alliance base pro forma and the various scenarios that were presented to the board at the last meeting. And this would be subject to special counsel approval. I would like to turn the presentation over to Brian Goldstein. He is the lead person at Pacific Energy Advisors that has been leading the resource adequacy solicitation on behalf of Clean Energy Alliance.
Thank you, Barbara. Good afternoon, everybody. I know I'm sitting in between everyone in their weekends right now. So I will kind of get to the point of this presentation, and I'm happy to discuss any questions and comments afterwards. With respect to resource adequacy, just to give a little background here, this is a product in which load serving entities in California need to procure and contract for in order to meet a compliance obligation with the California Public Utilities Commission and the California Independent System Operator, the CAISO. The point of the Resource Adequacy Program is to ensure there's enough generating capacity on the grid to meet peak energy demands. In California, the peak period or peak demands are in the summer when it's hot and everyone's running their air conditioners. So this product itself, just want to distinguish it from energy. This is not energy that you're selling to your customers. This does not appear on the annual power content label that gets mailed out to your customers. This is to ensure, again, that there's enough generators on the grid to meet peak demand periods. The products themselves that need to be procured, in the case of CEA, that's local resource adequacy, and there's one local area, the San Diego and Imperial Valley area, that we have to procure from. And then there's a system obligation. The local and the system obligations, that is based on where the generator physically sits. So the power plant actually has to be in the San Diego and Imperial Valley to meet a local obligation. For a system obligation, it can be anywhere more or less in California within the CAISO balancing authority. The flexible product, on top of the locational attributes, we also will have requirements to procure what's called a flexible RA product. That's based on how quickly this power plant can respond to peak demand needs. So how fast can it ramp up and ramp down to meet real-time system reliability needs? So these various attributes, we will receive actual requirements from the CPUC in late July. The real numbers we have forecast right now that we're using to procure from. But we will have a multi-year procurement obligation going out 3 years for the local, so through 2023. And then with the system and flexible 1 year out, just through 2021. I'll talk a little bit more shortly here about some of the upcoming compliance obligations. So some more background on resource adequacy, just as some market information for you. This product, this program in California, it's become quite a difficult product to secure. It's become more expensive. And this has all happened within the last few years. And some of these reasons have to do with a lot of the natural gas fleet coming offline, as a lot of you know. There's a lot of gas power plants in Southern California that are along the Pacific Ocean. These are once through cooling units. These are also slated to come off the grid. So as you can appreciate, right, as demand is high, demand is high and supply continues to go down, that puts pressure upwards on prices. Another reason for this kind of dichotomy we're in right now is that these clean energy replacements are slow to come online. The energy storage, the batteries that you probably hear a lot about, that combined with the solar, that is not yet deployed on a large scale in California. That it soon will be, but those resources, right, that steel is not yet in the ground. In this program, the Resource Adequacy Program, the procurement obligations have to be with resources that are already on the grid and can respond to system reliability needs. There's also more competition amongst buyers. It wasn't that long ago where there were 3 utilities, a little bit of direct access providers, and maybe a couple CCAs. So there wasn't many buyers. Now with the proliferation of CCAs throughout the state, you have a lot of buyers and a lot more competition than there historically was. Back to the obligation itself. As I mentioned before, we have a multi-year local obligation, so to contract for resource adequacy in the San Diego Imperial Valley for 21 through 2023. Though that contracting effort, the compliance filings to show that you secured enough have to be submitted to the CPUC and CAISO by October 31st of this year. So this is an immediate compliance obligation, a bit different than the RPS contracting you were just discussing, in that you've got a little bit more time to contract for that to secure those resources. This is more or less an immediate obligation upcoming here shortly in the fall. In response to getting out ahead of CEA's needs, Pacific Energy Advisors had issued a solicitation. I believe that solicitation actually went out on May 26th, and we've received offers on June 2nd. Next slide, please. We received several offers, so that was good news, especially in a market where it's a bit constrained. And one of the things to also consider is that this 3-year local contracting obligation, this is a relatively new obligation that went into effect last year for the first time. Up until that point, it was a 1-year forward obligation for all products. And so with a 3-year contracting obligation that kicked in last year, a lot of resource adequacy, products and resources are already under contract with entities that are currently serving load. So we were pleasantly surprised that we received several offers. They were competitive. Pricing was higher than the original pro forma. A lot of that has to do with what I was talking about a little earlier about the supply and demand balance and how that continues to get tighter and tighter, which continues to push pressure upwards on prices. The other piece I wasn't able to talk about previous slide, one of the items that is also affecting the marketplace and prices is the CPUC continues to change the resource adequacy rules on a pretty regular basis, unfortunately. Several rule changes actually were voted out by the PUC at their meeting yesterday that will go into effect that will impact the 2021 compliance cycle. So that's another reason for some of the issues that we have to battle in the marketplace to secure this product. The updated pro forma reflects sufficient revenues to meet costs. So even though there was an increase from the original projections based on the offers that were received, still pencils out. With respect to targets of what quantities we're looking to fill, again, we don't have that much time before October 31st. And as you can imagine, the closer we get to October 31st, the less supply there's available, the higher the prices go. So we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket right now. However, we do want to try to contract for a material amount to give you a good head start on this effort. And so the initial target through this solicitation was procuring to 50% of the projected requirements for 2021 and 2022, and then for 25% to 30% of the requirements in 2023. To that note, why, aside from potentially taking advantage of better opportunities in the future, I think there's a probability that greater probability that prices will continue to move up as we get towards October 31st. But in parallel, SDG has issued their own solicitation to sell resource adequacy products for 2021 through 2023. So CEA does plan on participating in that solicitation to potentially contract for the resource adequacy products that they need through SDG&E solicitation as well. And that completes the presentation here, and happy to take any questions and comments.
All right, thank you. Ms. Boswell, did you want to add anything before we move on to questions?
No, I think that presentation covered it. I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, and then just checking with the board secretary, did we have any public comment?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions from the board? No. Any comments?
Thank you for that presentation. You explained that well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I do have, so one of the things that I found interesting on this is that we're basing the costs off of the base pro forma. So that's the pro forma that doesn't show any rate discounts to our customers. Is that correct?
The pricing that came in was factored into all scenarios of the pro forma. So all base, a 1% discount, 2% discount, as well as 100% PCC1 at launch, and phasing out the PCC2 by 2023. So each of those scenarios, the power supply line had included these costs. Okay, that's good. I appreciate that clarity. Okay. Any additional questions? If there's no additional questions or comments, I hear a motion to approve.
I move a staff recommendation that we authorize our interim CEO execute agreements for resource adequacy procurement for an amount not to exceed 14 million over 3 years, and which has been included within the CEA base pro forma, subject to special energy transactions attorney approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll do the roll call vote, please.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haviland,
Yes.
Chair Schumacher.
Aye. An item passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we will go ahead and move on to the board member requests for future agenda items. Do I see any suggestions, requests from other board members? Okay, I had two things. The first is actually a request that I have for asking our council Mr. Stepanisic to review. We're receiving the sustainable workforce policy language back on July 18th or at our next board meeting. There's been some language that has come in around the sustainable workforce from during public comment on June 19th. And I'm requesting the board's permission to submit that to the general counsel so that he can review that and bring it back to us on the as an evaluated item in comparison to what we will have coming back before us. Is that okay with the other board members?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll make sure that Mr. Stepanisic has that to review and bring back to us. And then the second piece was consideration for the moving up of the choosing the pro forma or choosing the business option. I know that we had talked about the rate setting side of things, but as we kind of head into these conversations, it's more and more looking like we may want to have that conversation about 0% rate discount, 1% rate discount, 2%, and then which type of buckets. I would like to move that agenda item forward in time so that we're grappling with that a little sooner.
Are you looking for board feedback on that?
Yeah.
Well, those are really important decisions that it would be great to get figured out sooner rather than later. I just want to make sure that staff is going to have the information that we'll need to make those decisions sooner.
And I don't think we will, as we're not going to have the ERA proceedings. We're not going to have a lot of these important decisions that are coming up. So again, I don't think we need to lock ourselves into anything until we get closer. I mean, I thought that that's what staff recommendation was before anyway.
Would it be possible to start the conversation without locking in decisions until we have all the information, but just based on what we know now, the direction we want to head, and then the final decisions when we have all the information we need to do that?
Yeah, I think that would be really wise because we keep getting the pro formas as items that are attached to other agenda items, not as a standalone item for us to have a real conversation about. And I certainly, Ms. Becker, I don't want for us to make a decision without having all of the information in front of us. And I do understand that some of that is just too far out in the future, but we haven't really had a chance as a board to dig into what we think about each of the options that we've talked about so far. So would the board feel comfortable with having that as a standalone, at least informational item that we can then just have a conversation around? There's no recommendations attached to it. It's just, let's just have a conversation around that as an informational discussion item. Would that be more comfortable?
I guess I'm just thinking it's just so premature again, because I can't make a decision on what type of a rate discount we would want until we have the numbers. I mean, the numbers could be completely different and they change with each new circumstance. I'm not sure that it's even worthwhile. But again, I think you've heard me say over and over, if you want to talk about keeping options open, I really just want to keep all my options open. And that to me sounds like something, again, even the bucket 1 and the bucket 2 and all that kind of stuff. I want to keep my options open. So if that's the type of discussion you want, I'm not sure, it just doesn't seem to be productive to do that when we just don't know what the numbers are.
Yeah, I think one of my concerns, and maybe this is why we need to have this conversation as an agenda item. But one of my concerns is that it's not board policy that's leading us at this point. It's just sort of the operational inertia of setting up a JPA. And as we've seen now in a couple of items, I think, over the last, over the last week, there are decisions that would benefit, I would argue, from policy direction from this board. So I think that's where I'm sitting with this, is feeling a little like we're not grappling as a board with the policy direction that we could be having, because we keep saying let's just focus on the operational side of things, but then we're having to make decisions where the policy would be beneficial. That's what I'm seeing, and we may disagree on that, but that's just where I'm at. Ms. Haviland?
It just as another benefit to talking about it and reviewing the pro forma as a standalone agenda item is it gives the public an opportunity to get their comments in and for us to be able to consider those, because sometimes we get some pretty meaty topics that the public wants to engage in, and it gives us time to research those and talk about those as a board before we're making a final policy decision. And
but again, the public looking at numbers that are could be completely different by the time. I don't see how the public could weigh in if they don't know what the numbers are as well. I mean, if they,
well, I think what
I
they're
guess
going
they
to
could weigh in and say, I definitely. Oh, did you have your hand up, Barb?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
You finish, and then I would like to.
I mean, I'm basically finished. I still think that it's, you're just going to be looking at something that could change in the next day.
Go ahead, Ms. Boswell, go ahead.
If I could make this suggestion, the request for proposals for the long-term renewable closes August. It closes July the 24th, and that will help to inform what the current market is for the PCC1 and PCC2. And I would suggest if the board it pleases the board to bring back the pro formas in August that would reflect these. We might also have some insight into where rates are going with regards to ERA, and maybe the board could then maybe prioritize those different scenarios in terms of what the first priority of CEA is with regards to a rate discount and the PCC1 and PCC2 options without setting the formal policy.
Yeah, I think so I'm comfortable with that only after we have set the bid evaluation criteria. So I think that the bid evaluation criteria as a standalone agenda item has to happen before July 24th closes and we get the bids back. So see what I mean? I don't want for us to have the solicitations back and then have the conversation about whether or not to prioritize bucket 1, bucket 2, and all of these other items that were listed in the RFP, because that's reactive.
Yes.
So
the bid evaluation policy is scheduled for July 16th for the board.
So then if we have, what are the items on the pro forma on July 16th as well? So that heading into that, when we have the next agenda item around making some decisions based upon the pro forma, we have had 2 meetings that are informational, or 1 meeting that's an informational about the pro forma only, and then the second where we actually use the pro formas with more information behind it with the rate setting, et cetera. Does that make sense? So that's what Ms. Haviland was talking about as far as giving the public more opportunity to be able to get acquainted with some of the high level even information that's contained in the pro forma rather than the detailed numerical side of things.
Sure, happy to have schedule an agenda item for July 16th that discusses the underlying assumptions that go into developing the pro forma and not the detailed numbers, if I'm hearing that's what you're asking.
Yeah, it's yes. But we also want to see the pro formas in comparison, right? We haven't been presented with a formal agenda item presenting all of the pro forma studies that have been done. So that would be a standalone item on July 16th, where we are formally presented with all of the work that's been done, rather than it being sort of incorporated into other agenda items as it has been previously. No decisions or anything like that, but just informational presentation specific to the pro formas. on July 16th. Is that Ms. Haviland?
I support that because I get a lot of questions about the pro forma.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to be very confident in my answers.
Ms. Becker?
I call you all the time.
Yeah. Ms. Becker, how does that
Sure.
sound?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So July 14th is going to be a really great meeting. Very, very informational heavy and policy heavy. So appreciate that. And then we'll also have that added in on the solicitation when we receive the solicitation side of things as well. So informational. Yeah. Ms. Boswell, did you need anything else before around that conversation?
Nope. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I really appreciate it. This was very helpful. Great meeting. And the next meeting will be July 16th at 2 p.m. and the City of Del Mar will be the host of that meeting. Thank you everybody for your flexibility in putting together this special meeting. And we are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.